Welcome one and all to Umami Manga. I'm one of your hosts, Petter, and with me I got my co-host, James.
Hey!
And today we're talking about Volume 7 of To Your Eternity. We are back after like 2 weeks of not doing anything To Your Eternity related, but
It feels like longer for some reason. I don't know
yeah.
why.
Yeah, it does, I agree. Maybe it's because of the time skip in the manga.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe.
But yes, it has been some time that have passed here. But I guess if unless you have anything else to say, we will get into the discussions.
Sure.
All right, so let's start with Fushi, the Nokker Slayer.
The Nokker Devourer.
Yeah, he's been eating them for the past 40 years now. Like, man,
Taking a page out of Piorin's book, I guess.
exactly. I thought that was a really nice touch. Was that originally brought up in that little in between chapter page?
So I didn't know about it until you said it.
Right.
I don't think
Yeah. Then
the chapters normally say it. I think it's like in the volume.
exactly. I think that's what it was at first. So it was nice to see that here, as well as later in the volume. Another thing that was revealed in one of those little extra pages about this religion and things, how people started
Right.
praising Fushi,
Right.
would also be part of this volume later on. But anyway,
What that tells me is that if you want the full story, you need the volumes.
sort of, yeah. I mean, I guess it's nothing like 100% super
No,
crucial, but still, I
no.
do think it adds to the experience in a really nice way,
Yeah.
ultimately. But so far I've been keeping you up to date on at least the most important extra pages here.
Thank you.
But anyway, one thing I want to mention real quick: in the first 5 chapters of this volume, Fushi is wearing Gugu's trousers.
Oh, I never noticed that.
I
Really?
didn't notice it until like the 5th chapter, so I had barely I almost missed it, but he is, and I thought that was such a nice little detail, something to remember Gugu by.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's so sweet.
Why did I notice that? Dang it. I have failed as a Goo Goo fan.
I don't think I picked up on it my first time reading through this like last year either. So, anyway, something that's kind of made extra clear in this book is how Fushi is he's afraid of getting hurt from losing other people again,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
so that's why he's been staying away from everything for all that time that he did right before this volume started.
I had hoped that at volume 5, like the end of volume 5, he had realized he needed people to help him to
Right.
not only take out the knockers, but just enjoy life and be happy. But thankfully, he realizes that this volume, I think finally we can say that. But maybe towards the end, he has a little bit of doubt. But I think he's able to overcome that and see that. But earlier on, yeah, he's very much just wants to do everything himself and not have that pain like you were saying. So
Mm.
I don't know. It was kind of sad to see him revert back to that. But I guess it was also just the continuation of the lesson that I guess Tonari was trying to teach him. Well, not like deliberately trying to teach him when they were younger, but definitely when she was older. I think it was a lesson that she was teaching him.
Absolutely. And actually, about Tonari, there was one part that kind of confused me. I mean, it's about Fushi, but it's also regarding
Mm-hmm.
related to Tonari. Is after Fushi woke up from the Western Morning Glory, and he came into the room where Tonari was lying in the bed, he asked why the Knocker attacked Tonari, but at that point he shouldn't have figured out that it was Tonari yet. So I got really confused by that.
Oh, I missed that.
Like it's like basically the first thing he says as he comes into the room. And so I was thinking if maybe it's a mistake, like either Oima's own mistake or perhaps a translator's mistake. I don't know. However, do you see it now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I also had this thought that what if he somehow subconsciously knew that it was her without really having realized it like properly, and
Maybe.
that just kind of slipped out without him necessarily noticing that he even said it that way. Maybe. I'm just trying to find a reason for like to make this work
Mm-hmm.
somehow. Um, Another like and kind of going along with that, I had the thought that what if while he was lying unconscious there on the table during the scene when it was only Hisame and Tonari, like when they were interacting with each other. What if he sort of had a dream about what was happening between them? Because I feel like maybe he sort of had that, maybe, or we speculated about that in Volume 5, I think, when Hayase would.
Was getting all fresh with him.
Yeah, exactly. He would later on have a dream about that. And I was thinking, like,
Sampling the Fushi course.
for sure, yeah.
Sorry.
Let's call it that. uh, like, so basically, what if he sort of had a dream about what was happening between Hisame and Tonari?
See, that I can see, but the name. eh, He should be able to register because later on he tries to transform into Tonari. He's like, "Oh, I can't.
Yeah.
Tonari's still alive."
Yeah.
So I think I totally glossed over this without thinking because we all know it's Tonari. It's no surprise.
Right.
They literally say it earlier on.
Yeah, like to us, we were basically able to figure that out right away as readers.
Right. So it was just it just reading that kind of goes over your head. But you're right. He shouldn't have known that. And I think it's a mistake.
Yeah.
Uh, and it could, and I don't know if it's necessarily an Oima mistake. It might just be, well, I don't want to throw the translators under the bus, but it could be a translator.
Exactly. It could be either, really. It's hard to say just right now, but yeah, it was something that made me think, at least. And of course, I don't want it to be a mistake, so I'm trying to find ways to make it work. But I mean, I really don't know, and maybe it shouldn't be taken too seriously. But yeah, just wanted to see if you had any ideas there.
Well, we gotta wait till season 2, I guess.
Oh yeah, exactly. Maybe the anime will make sense of that. I do hope so.
No, I don't have any possible reasons for that. I think you gave the first reasoning you gave was good. Like maybe he just subconsciously knew it, but it just doesn't seem consistent with how he's reacting to finding out that Tonari is not dead. You know.
I agree completely. It definitely seems mostly like a mistake, all things considered. No, well. But hey, let's talk more about that scene. Like about how when Fushi showed Tonari all the people that he met on his journey, we get to know that Rin, Shin, Boozman, and Nand have all passed away at this point. And I actually have something to talk about regarding this, something a little bit speculation-esque. So back in Volume 5, when we learned that Perona had died, it was revealed in a very similar way.
True.
In that volume. And when we talked about that, we sort of speculated, or we asked ourselves, kind of, does Fushi take the form of the person the way they looked when they died, or does he take the form of the person he remembers as he remembers them?
Right.
And I think, as I said then, which I still stand by regarding Perona, is that it's kind of both in this instance, because I'm quite sure Hayase killed her pretty much right after Fushi left anyway, so it would be the same regardless of which of those options is true with her. But here we have Rin, Shin, and Nand, all of whom could have lived and aged long after Fushi last saw them.
Right.
Yet he does take the form, like for all of them, they take the form of how he remembers them, because that's how they looked when he last saw them. But I do think it's actually pretty possible that Fushi, that he does take the form of them as they looked when they died. And I actually have a few things to kind of back that up. Because, like, based on this, yes, like, just the fact that they all appear the way he should remember them makes it seem like that isn't the case. But anyway, yeah, I do have some points to suggest the opposite. And basically, the way we saw his shape-shifting powers work at the very beginning, he perfectly replicated the forms of a stone, of moss, and of a wolf. All of that he did without having a mind or a consciousness or any memories of those forms at that time. Yet he was still able to replicate, like, make perfect copies of those forms. And similarly, sort of, we learn in this book, or at least the way I interpreted it, he went to the library and kind of, he touched books, and then he would go home and read those books because he would make the books. At least that's how I interpreted it. Something like that. So that also indicates that he doesn't need to have a perfect recollection of how something looks in order to recreate it. He just needs some kind of stimulus, like a memory of
Mm-hmm.
of a stimulus from it.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily, he doesn't necessarily need to know exactly what it looks like. Because I'm thinking if he is able to create a book that he doesn't actually know the contents of, then that should go for the same with people. Like he doesn't necessarily have to know what they look like in order to recreate them. All he needs is the stimulus of the memory of them, like having known them, having had some kind of shared maybe some sort of bond with them.
Right. But he is creating the book as it was when he touched it, not when, 50 years later it's all torn and ripped. He's not creating that kind of a book. You know what I mean?
That's a fair point
Like,
too.
and this isn't in that inanimate object, so it's not similar to an animal or a human that actually grows and stuff like that. So I see what you're saying, and fair point. But I'm not convinced yet that he's able to transform when they die. I mean, it would be interesting if that was the case. But I think the fact I look at Rin, and first off, the fact that she died off screen, I'm okay with. Versus Perona, I was really upset with Rin. Her story was basically finished,
Mm.
and at least I felt that way, and it finished well on a note that is impactful. So I was okay with that. Oima gets a pass there.
Yeah.
But the second thing is with Rin, I see her and the fact that she's basically the same. She looks exactly the same as when Fushi left. I don't see it. I excuse me. I see it as Fushi's only able to transform, at least at this point, into what he remembers the person as. Maybe he gains the ability to guesstimate how a person will age uh, as they go on, and he's able to replicate that through transformation. I'm just spitballing something there, but
Hmm.
I don't know. At this point, I feel like the evidence is more pointing towards it's all last time he saw them.
But why would he create a perfect replica of a wolf even with the wound, even though he had no memory of that wolf? Like he couldn't have acid rock, he couldn't have memory of anything.
Because that's the last sensation he had. It's not so much like the memory; it's the last sensation.
Right. Exactly. And if the memories aren't that big of a deal in it, then okay, okay, I get your point. I get your point.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we really don't have enough necessarily to like iron it down, like to necessarily
Yeah.
say, but I see your point. I guess it's the part of me that kind of enjoys the tragedy of it, that kind of wants this to be the case, because obviously this would be the more tragic like option, because it would mean that all of these characters died young.
Mm. I mean, it's still a possibility.
Yeah. So I was thinking about Reen, and perhaps her parents didn't better themselves.
Mm.
Maybe she was still forced into marriage against her will, and possibly, and I know this is dark, but maybe she took her life over how miserable she was feeling.
Yeah.
I
Ah.
I could see that being her
Mm-hmm.
end, sort of. I wouldn't put that past Oima.
And that would be really tragic. Yeah. But that happens to everybody? Like Sheen and Nando and all of them?
Perhaps.
Not necessarily killing themselves.
Right.
And obviously we all die differently.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, it's a story, so it's definitely possible.
Yeah. I mean, and of course, it's just my speculation, and it might go against some of what we've sort of learned in the story. Like we know that,
Mm-hmm.
like, it has been mentioned that Fushi needs to remember things and items in order to recreate those shapes. But as I sort of touched on earlier, like I don't think it's
Right.
necessarily the memory of that thing, because he, well, as we saw with the books, he can recreate items without necessarily knowing exactly what they look like, but still be able to make a like perfect copy of them. But yes, that's all I had to say about that.
Hmm. So how would we know? How will we ever know if they died premature or not? I guess
Yeah.
it just depends on if someone later on dies and we're able to understand that Fushi is able to transform to the moment that they die. So let's say,
Mm.
for example, Again, I don't know how the story will go, but let's just take Bone for example.
Yeah.
Who Okay, so Bone. Let's say Bone leaves Fushi at one point, and he dies in old age. But the last time Fushi saw him was, prime age of 20 or something like that.
Uh huh.
If Fushi transforms into his older self, then I think that confirms
Mm.
he transforms into the moment they die.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. We really need an instance like that to confirm this. So until potentially something like that would happen, we can't really know for sure.
Okay,
So,
gotcha.
or at least, yeah, I agree with you on that.
Well, now you're gonna make me have that in the back of my head. Thank you.
Good.
Thanks for that, Petter.
I just, it's just this side of me that enjoys the tragedy in these stories. So I just, yeah. But yeah, interesting speculating there, for sure. By the way, that was a beautiful scene. Really touching to see all these people again, the people that he'd met on his journey and all that was great.
Yeah, that was nice.
And especially the reveal of Reen being dead was especially impactful, because even though even if she didn't die young, she still would have died somewhat young, like when she was maybe 40 or 50.
Yeah, it's hard to say exact age, but yeah, definitely.
About 40 years ago, she was 15.
Well, let's talk about how many years have passed, just for the heck of it.
Yeah.
So he spent 4 years as a fish, right? Was it 4 years?
2 years as a fish, and then almost 40 years on the island.
2 years. Okay, so 2 years as a fish, and then who knows how long time before that with Piorin. It could have been short. It could have been a short amount of time, or maybe it was longer than that. I don't know, but we'll just say 2 years in total before his 40-year-old self.
Mm.
So at least 42 years. That would put Veen at least at 56, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So yeah, that's not ideal. You would hope she lived a little longer.
Exactly. Or well, you would hope that.
Oh, better.
I'm sorry, no. No, I do hope she lived a good, long, happy life. I do. But yes. The Beholder says almost 40 years on the island. So he doesn't say exactly 40 years. So maybe that's 38 or 39. Like, we don't know exactly.
Okay.
But yeah, like 40 something. Like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, about 40 years. But yeah, Fushi is replicating money now.
Yeah, I mean,
what do you think about
smart.
that? Smart, but a little shady.
Yeah, but he's an immortal being.
He gets a pass.
I mean, maybe he'll get a conscience and be like, "Oh my gosh, this is actually a bad thing I'm doing."
Oh,
Although
yeah,
I did think
maybe.
him producing the money for that lady whose son was being sold at a ransom or something like that, or held at ransom. Well, actually, that surprised that he didn't have any problems as much as I thought it would. I thought people would start begging him for money like crazy at that time.
Yeah, it seemed that way too. I agree.
But they just everyone was really happy, really chill about it. Oh, that's so great. I don't have any desires for money. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
I guess that's refreshing in a way, because usually the people would just, be like, hey, give me some.
I agree with that. But yeah, like he is really praised as a hero or like a god almost by a lot of those people there.
Yeah.
But then there's also those people that shun him and that really dislike him and that want him gone from this world. Mm-hmm. Now that he's exposed himself and become known to the general public. So I think that opens up for some really interesting stuff, I think.
Yeah, it does. The story is really taking an interesting turn where, yeah, some years had passed during this, I guess, first arc, or I don't know, I even hesitate. The first part. The first
like
part
the
of the
first
story.
6 books?
Yeah, the first 6 books, the story has moved forward, but not incredibly fast paced.
Yeah.
But then we get to this point where hundreds of years are passing.
Right. We had like the 40 years at the beginning, and then toward the end, there were several generations that passed. We don't know we do know exactly.
I mean, we could, based on Hayase's genealogy, we can say it's at least 100 years, maybe close to 200.
Maybe, yeah. I'm not gonna do the math now, but yeah.
No,
a lot of time has passed.
I'm
Anyway.
just spitballing here.
Yeah.
But either way, the years are passing so quickly,
Hmm.
and that could be just, uh, you know, a comparison to how Fushi's viewing time at this point,
Yeah.
where time, instead of becoming where the days are slower, it's like the years almost act like days. You know?
Exactly. Yeah, half a year doesn't feel like an eternity to him anymore, which is great.
Yeah. Which yeah, definitely. So yeah, like we were saying, it's interesting that we get these different factions and even countries involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I am interested to see where all the I I guess politics, not really politics, it's just people who don't like or who think Fushi's a devil or demon,
Yeah.
and then the Guardians, along with the I guess that kingdom that Bones from.
Yeah, Uralis. Or
What's it called?
I pronounce it Uralis, but I'm not sure
Uralis.
if I do that pronunciation justice.
I'll have to look at the Japanese and because the katakana will spell it out basically.
True, or at least sort of. It depends on, I
Well,
guess,
yeah, true.
what the intention is.
A
But
Japanese pronunciation of it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's really interesting to see where this is going to go. More on Fushi was something that was thought was kind of interesting was about what Tonari told him to find a friend, to find someone who can understand him.
Yeah.
Was interesting, and I think it seems like Fushi wonders if Kahaku can become such a friend to him. At
Hmm.
least it seemed that way to me at one point later on in the volume. If he kind of
Right.
had those sorts of thoughts about Kohaku
Hmm.
or Kahaku, and I do think he does try to build some sort of friendship bond with him, like that. I mean, he doesn't think of him as a super special person like Gugu or March were, obviously. But
Right.
I think he does have those sorts of thoughts and maybe that curiosity to maybe have Kahaku as a friend like that in the future.
I definitely have more thoughts about Kahaku,
Mm.
so I'll say for his character thing, but
Yeah.
I do think that there is potential here
Mm.
for a friendship more so than with really any of the other, uh, I guess, reincarnations of Hayase.
Probably, yeah.
So something I want to bring up is earlier on in the story when Fushi gets back from the sea. By the way, that whole sea escapade was pretty funny,
Yeah.
and the goatee, or actually, so his friend in the sea was. I thought that was really funny. Like the greatest betrayal in all of anime is right there when that goatee left him. But so something I realized, I thought goatee was a type of fish, um, but I looked up goatee. I was like, what is this? And
Uh-huh.
apparently, so it must be an English translation thing. Ghoti can also be pronounced fish because of how messed up English is with its weird pronunciations.
Oh, I think I've heard maybe something about this when I was
Yeah, yeah,
younger.
yeah, yeah.
This sounds familiar. Oh
I
yeah.
this is something that I think I heard a long time ago, but I
Right.
totally forgot about.
Uh-huh.
So got just real quick, like rough
Mm.
is spelled with gh at the end, so that's fi, so with fish, and so you can do that for every one of those letters.
Right.
Anyway, so I thought that was really funny, and kudos to I assume is a translation team for coming with that. Maybe there's something similar in Japanese. I'm
Right.
not sure,
Interesting.
but yeah, that was the greatest portrayal in anime history, and I'll never forgive you.
Totally
Um,
was.
but after that, he
Mm.
says he transformed into the form that felt the most him, the most me.
Yes.
And it was well, I see. I even said it's Fushi.
Yeah.
It's the boy.
Uh-huh.
But then later on in the story, he's basically forced to change his appearance because they recognize the boy too much,
Yeah.
and now he's walking around as Perona,
Mhm.
which I wonder if he should have gone with Mia more. I just because Mia doesn't have much of a character in the story, and that Fuji transforming to Mia kind of be like a fresh slate, whereas Perona was was someone that the reader really knows and kind of is like conflicting. At least for me, it was like conflicting seeing him just being himself as Perona, instead of just transforming her into her for battle purposes or whatever.
I see. I
I don't
mean,
know.
I get you. I get
It's a
you.
strange thing. You know what I'm saying?
I do, but I don't feel that way personally. I actually really liked it because I think,
Yeah.
well, because of her being much more of an actual character, much more of an important character to the story compared to, for example, Mia.
Yeah.
I think that just makes it more interesting in general.
That's true too. That's true too. So like it's kind of love hate because I love Perona's design so much because oh my gosh,
Of
like
course.
so cute. But yeah, I guess there were just a couple like conflicting feelings. For one, does he stay as Perona? Is that a spoiler if I ask this? If you think it is a spoiler, don't tell me. But does he stay as Perona, like for this like arc, or does he ever like go back to being what he used to call himself, me? The boy.
Well, should I answer this?
You don't have to. It could be just a rhetorical question.
Right, right. Yeah.
So I understand. Like spoiler reasons, you don't have to answer. But it's just something that got on my question because if he does stay Perona, that does bring up some interesting, not complications, but potential plot threads.
Hmm.
And I don't know. It'd be interesting to see where it goes.
Absolutely. I'm happy to see more, just to see him use the shapes of his other, friends more frequently. Personally,
Oh, that's a good
I
point.
remember that was something when I read this series the first time, or these 12 books. That's something that was going through my head. Like I was hoping, okay, kind of wishing he would use Gugu's form more, and like we see Perona's form here. Like it's something that
Hmm.
I definitely enjoyed seeing.
Yeah, I'm glad that I'm glad we can see Perona again as well.
But yeah, speaking about like that part of the story, he lets himself get captured by Bon in hopes of perhaps making friends with him in order to, to have his massive army on his side in the fight against the Knockers, which is good thinking, I think.
Yeah.
Especially considering kind of where he was at for a big portion of this volume, with
Hmm.
not really wanting to incorporate himself into any situations or be in a bigger situation with a lot of people around. So I think that was a good move, very good move.
Yeah. Fushi, the ruler of the free people. I like it.
Yeah, exactly. And well, I guess my last thing on Fushi is that we actually get to learn at the very end of this book that March and Gugu and everybody else,
Yeah.
they are actually walking alongside Fushi wherever he goes. It's just like no one can see them except for Bon. Bon can see them.
Yeah.
So really interesting to know that like they're there all the time.
That's fascinating because we have been wondering ever since I think the Gugu when Gugu died and he said he had no regrets, but then we saw March in the back. We
Yeah.
had always wondered what was that. I listened back to that discussion and we were contemplating what that could be.
Hmm.
I think this shows that they really are there walking with Fushi this whole time, and it's not everybody. I think based on what was discussed with Fushi about Phi, and we can talk about that in detail with the Beholder, but
Yes, yes.
or whenever you would like.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
with Phi, to me, most of the spirits that were with, or not spirits, most of the people that were with Fushi and he can transform into, most of their Phi went onward, moved on. Whether it was reincarnation or onto the paradise or whatever the Beholder called it in chapter 6 or volume 6.
Hmm.
But we see that these guys stayed behind to be with Fushi. Uh, I'm not exactly sure why or how they made that choice. I think Tonari is probably the easiest to understand since it seemed like that was her goal from the moment she went back to Fushi, to go save him. It seemed
Yeah.
like that was kind of her desire. But everyone else, like Gugu said, he didn't regret his life, and so I thought that would mean he'd be okay with passing on.
Yeah,
But I guess he felt like he needed to be there for his little brother, and I
exactly.
admire that.
And yeah, and I think that's totally it too, because I think one of the things we learned about the Phi was that basically they can carry on somebody's will. That's kind of mostly what they do, supposedly. So I think someone who had a strong willpower to be with someone or to stand by a loved person or something like that. I think maybe it's related to that. Like maybe that's why these people who were the closest to Fushi want to stay by his side because that's what they wanted to do. Like that's what they would have
Hmm.
wanted.
I think that's a strong possibility. So just quick couple things. Fushi is the 40-year-old virgin. Um, although much older now.
True,
But
true.
just that whole beginning part, and then well, it's like in the middle after Tonari passes, Hisame visits him and tells him about things that we'll talk about, I guess. But just the fact that uh, he didn't know anything about procreation,
Mm-hmm.
and and the beholder is just like, you totally could do it. You could go to town. You just do it and try it.
I thought that was really funny too. How he said you can go to a town, but
Yeah.
that also makes it sound like you can go to town, like go to town.
When I first read it, I thought he said go to town, and I was just dying. And I was
Yeah,
like, "There's no way!" And I kept reading it. It's like, oh, there's an A there. Oh,
yeah, but it
okay.
must have been intentional. Like it's so funny. Ah, I loved it.
So obviously, we've established time is moving on. Is the world progressing in some sort of way? Like, is it changing from eras, or is it still how it was when, he was first in Yanome and traveling with, and
Hmm.
then ended up traveling with Bjorn and everything?
Yeah, I had those thoughts too, actually, and I think it's hard to tell because Fushi is constantly traveling around the world. So
Hmm.
different parts of the world can, even at the same time, be in different states of technology, or they could have advanced differently. So
Right.
because of that, I think it's
I guess
really
it's hard to
difficult to
say right now.
tell. Yeah, but
Hmm.
I mean, I would
Okay.
assume the world does move forward technologically to some extent, but I don't think we can really prove it.
Yeah. I think in theory, if the world is progressing at a fairly rapid pace, and obviously Fushi being immortal, the modern day type of setting could be a possibility in this story. It just
Totally.
depends where Oyama goes with it. But
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I didn't realize when I first started reading. I mean, it was a possibility in my mind, but I didn't realize how quickly we would get to 200 years or so.
Uh huh. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so there's that. I forgot to mention this, but the irony is not lost on me that he transformed to Perona.
Mm.
The irony is not lost on me. And maybe I'll bring that up again, but let you let
Wait.
you think about that.
Okay. I will think on that.
Okay, I'm done.
So let's move on to Tonari then. 55-ish years old, and she is so cool.
She's such a boss. Like, it's
Man, I love
amazing.
her. I love her so much. Uh, but why didn't she tell Fuji who she was? Was it really out of embarrassment, like Sandal said at the end there?
Hmm.
Or do you think it could have been something else?
I mean, just my thinking of what the writer could be thinking, I thought it was just a poetic way of Fushi finding out who Tonari actually is.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it worked well, but it was a little weird that it was just so obvious it was Tonari and that Fushi was never able to pick it up.
I mean, it had been that like 40 years, to be fair.
Right, right.
But.
Hey, I waited. Okay, I only waited like a day after our discussion. Um, so
Hmm.
yeah, I understand. I understand that it wouldn't be fresh on his mind, but still, you think he'd be able to pick up the pieces a little bit. But
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is. I really don't have it. I don't have any other idea what it could be besides she just wanted to play coy.
Yeah, right. Probably. I could definitely see her being like that. But yeah, she knew there would be Western Morning Glory in the tea, or she very much suspected it anyway. So
Hmm.
she shared kind of her story about how she started building up her immunities, and of course we
So
get the
cool.
explanation for why the Western Morning Glory never really affected her, having to do with the poison in her owl Ligard, and how that made her resistant to that from a very young age. Such a cool thing, and to learn that she has
Hmm.
been going through this entire process of making yourself resistant to all of these various poisons, uh, for Fushi's sake, to eventually be able to help him and to maybe pass that on to him. Such a cool thing to do.
Yeah, it's impressive, and I thought it was very clever how Oima tied Ligard and Tonari's fate in that way, and how her immunity to the Western Morning Glory was because of her owl. Like that, I think that was very,
Hmm.
very clever.
Yeah.
And then just her going above and beyond to become immune like that
Uh-huh.
is incredible. It made you really appreciate Tonari even more, and
Yeah.
just the amazing person she became, and just a hard worker she is. But it also made her death feel even more just sudden and like, wait, no, you're so cool. Why?
Yeah, like you just you
Like,
just got back.
you just got back. Why are you leaving?
Yeah. Yeah, that was rough. But after she died, we learned that, well, at some point after she had passed away,
Hmm.
she became sort of a mentor figure ish for Bon, at least for a
Yeah,
while when he was a kid. I thought that was a super neat little thing, and
spreading the
she
word of Fushi.
exactly, yeah. She told him how he would, or how he could eventually locate Fushi and recognize Fushi.
I really wonder why or how she found him. I
Yeah,
think I know why. I think because she recognized. I mean, obviously, like this kid can talk to me. Of course, of
right.
course, I can. Uh, he could talk to spirits, whatever. So
Uh,
that obviously that's going to be useful for Fushi. I bet she thought, and that's great. But how did she find that?
yeah,
Like,
yeah. Like I feel like it must have been just circumstance, or
I guess
maybe
so.
in this kind of in that plane of existence, in that spirit world, whatever you want to call it. Because I imagine there's plenty of dead people walking around there, sort of like that,
Yeah,
and maybe word has spread in there, like, oh, there's this kid
yeah. The
in
rumors
this
fly.
castle.
Uh-huh.
Perhaps she heard about it like that. I actually hadn't exactly really thought of it too much, but I guess that could make sense.
Well, and it could be that some spirits are, or just not some spirits, but just that their kind of plane of existence doesn't work the same way as obviously the real world, and they're they don't have to walk to get to where they need to go. They could probably just appear there.
True.
Um, so it might be a mixture of word of mouth, but also maybe just some sort of awareness that a person like that exists.
Right. Totally.
So that, yeah, that's interesting.
Definitely.
But I definitely think it's because she sees how useful that can be for Fushi, and not like trying to manipulate the boy. Of course not. Just
Right. Right.
you know anything that could help Fushi, and if they become great friends, and if Fushi transforms into him,
Hmm.
I mean that to be able to have conversations, like I feels like that's where it would go. Like he'd be able to have conversations with these spirits
Yeah.
and Tonari. So I don't know. We'll see.
That could be very cool. But yeah, yeah, interesting stuff. Do you have anything more on Tonari?
I I liked your quote. Think back on us whenever you can. Just
Hmm.
that will make us happy that we lived.
Yes.
And I feel like that's a message that we can take into our own lives.
Mm.
Obviously, mortality is short, and the only way that we live on is through memories. And I think the Beholder even kind of touches on that in some aspect.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know. Part of my upbringing was the importance of family history and understanding where you come from, but also the stories that they told and who they were. And obviously, I'm not trying to make any of my ancestors like these amazing individuals, and some of them were incredible people and doing various things. But it's just it is interesting to just hear about their stories.
Yeah.
But more importantly, the people who that you knew personally that pass away, keeping them in mind, I think is even more important than necessarily your ancestors. Now that I think about it,
Mm,
because
mm,
you know the person that they want that they would want to remember them are the people that were close to them. So I think
absolutely.
what Tonai says here is very profound.
Definitely. And it really goes along with really one of the major themes of the story from the very beginning
Yeah.
is remembering your loved ones after they're gone. Even the boy in the snow village, he would paint all of the people from the village on the wall in his home in order to remember their faces. and
Right.
and Fushi himself, he does like that. That's a big thing for him too, because he remembers the people that he loved by having the ability to turn into them. And yeah, I think it really goes along with that really nicely.
For sure.
So if we don't have anything more on Tonari, we could talk, maybe lump Sandal into her discussion a little bit,
Yeah.
if you'd like. We learned that he did become a doctor, just like he said that was his dream back in Volume 5
Hmm.
when they talked about that. So I thought that was really nice to see. A dream fulfilled.
Somebody's dream fulfilled. Sorry. I don't have much on him other than a couple quotes that I really liked.
Yes.
Your friends don't live to make you sad.
Yeah.
And then I mean, so simple. We both love you, meaning him and Tonari.
Right, right.
And I think it's kind of a concept that's brought up a few times by Hayase earlier on in the story, and then now, and even later on in this volume, is that Fushi doesn't really understand, or at least the concept of love. Maybe he's felt love before. I think he definitely felt that with being with Gugu and that family, and Bjorn. I think he loved very much,
Yeah.
but I don't know if he quite understands that phrase or that expression yet. Maybe
Yeah.
so. I think it's important for him to hear that and understand that these people he spent times with, his friends,
Hmm.
they do love him.
Yeah.
They don't regret being with him.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think I agree completely. And also, like the first quote you said, your friends didn't live their lives just to one day bring you sadness, was I think something Fuji really needed to hear,
Hmm.
especially in that moment right after Tonari had died, and I think still the deaths of especially Gugu and Piorin are still weighing him down even after all these years. I think
Yeah.
he's still wearing Gugu's trousers after all these years.
Yeah.
So I think that is something or that's something that I thought of for a while. Like after I saw him say that, I actually had to sit down and just think about the meaning of that for a little while, and I really, really like it. It's something really it's cheerful in a melancholy way, kind of. But I think yeah, it's really, really good. So I guess that's all on Tonari and Sandal.
Yeah. I really wish Tonari could have lived a little longer, but
Yeah.
she's doing it. She's still doing time.
Right, exactly. She's still able to influence the story even though she's dead, which I thought was really
Yeah.
cool because that was really the first time a character who's passed away actually directly affects the story, like
Hmm.
by actually interacting with another character. But anyway, we were
Sorry.
done talking about her. So let's move on to Hisame, the little princess,
Cute kid.
Hayase's granddaughter, and she's like Hayase but wholesome.
Yeah. You can see her grandmother in her scary face.
Definitely, yeah. There was that one panel of her really, really, really scary face. I was
She's
like,
like, I was like, oh my gosh.
yeah, like a cat hissing.
Yeah.
Man, yeah, and we learned that she's the first successor slash the first reincarnation of Hayase, which was definitely interesting stuff going into this. Yeah, like that's brought into this story. Like it fits. I think it fits with the story since it's always been about sort of like souls and like
Hmm.
the human spirits and stuff like that. So reincarnation isn't like too surprising, but it's definitely interesting to see that, or well, to some extent anyway. It's mostly, as I said earlier, it's mostly like the will that's carried on, not straight up a person in a new like being the same
Right.
person in a new body, but mostly like
Right.
the will that's there. That's really interesting though. But it was also interesting to kind of get it like I guess a hard confirmation that Hayase wanted to have a child with Fushi. Like that was
Yeah.
really like her primary will, which has since
Mm-hmm.
been passed down to her descendants. So it was nice to get that like completely confirmed. So the Volume 5 cover art makes perfect sense now, even though obviously we were suspecting this ever since around Volume 5.
Right.
But it's interesting to see it, and obviously, as you pointed out earlier, also like very cute to see how Hisame, like how she thinks a child is made, and even Fushi doesn't understand it fully either. Like Fushi was probably lying
FBI,
awake,
open up!
like he was probably lying awake the whole night, just making sure that, oh, if I fall asleep and we sleep together, we might have a child. Like I cannot fall asleep
I made
tonight.
sure we didn't.
Yeah.
I sleep with no one.
That was really cute.
Was she going back to when she first came up into the story,
Yeah.
was she going to feed him the cubes that Hayase fed March?
Yeah, I think so. It looked a lot like it, and that was something
Wow.
that made March fall asleep. And she said that that's something that helps you sleep. So, or that something along those lines. So yeah, definitely. I thought about that too. Really
Man,
nice reference.
I mean, obviously it's just like the Yonome and Guardian tricks, but it's also just Hisame and just Hisame carrying on Hayashi's will. It's like
Mm-hmm. I wonder if those cubes are like just Western Morning Glory in another form.
either that or they haven't that injected into them.
Right. Yeah.
Either way.
Yeah, because it does have a similar effect. But yeah, good stuff. Anything more on Hisame?
When do we want to talk about the Guardians? Like just
Um,
their people. Do we want to save this section?
let's
Or...
save those for the next section, which is about Kahaku, the sixth successor of Hayase's spirit, or and the first successor to be male.
I really think he'll be a good friend. I know
I hope so.
this is Hayase we're talking about, but something about him is different. It's just bros, man. Bros all the way.
Yeah, right.
And I don't know, just yeah, there is that slight doubt with him when you're dealing with this lineage, I guess.
For sure.
But he does seem a little more trustworthy and a little more not thirsty, you know.
I don't know. I don't know when
Right?
he
Okay.
got
Okay.
to
Okay.
see
Okay. Okay. Okay.
when he got to see Perona there. Ah.
Yes. 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 I was gonna save that,
Okay.
but okay. So obviously he prefers women and is a man of culture, right?
Naturally, yeah.
Naturally, he knows fine wine when he sees it. The irony is not lost on me with Perona because
Hmm.
Hayase and Perona have this history together, and Hayase was the one to kill Perona,
Yes.
and so it's ironic that Kahaku would fall in love with the form of Perona, the person that Hayase kind of viewed as her rival, her enemy,
Yeah.
and so that's where the irony comes in.
That is really funny actually. But yeah, he was definitely totally simping for Perona right there. Like
Oh yeah,
the
I mean
moment
he
he
was
saw
so
her.
disappointed. He was so disappointed when he's like, I'm gonna transform into a dog.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, okay.
But you know, he has been doing a really good job working with defending the world from the Nokker attacks, and you know, he and his army has been seemingly doing a really good job at that without Fushi around. Or, you know,
Mm-hmm.
before they met Fushi, they heard of that the Yanome people, I think it was, had been able to fend off the Nokkers by themselves. So that's really admirable, I think. Really cool stuff. And also how he exposed himself. Like he showed his Nokker arm, you know, in front of all those people. Kind of exposed him himself as a quote unquote monster. But he was cool with it because I guess he doesn't really care too much since he's with Fushi, sort of, kind of.
Not only that, he's able to control it so much better
That too.
than any of the previous reincarnations. You know,
Yeah.
it's very interesting. It has gotten smaller.
Exactly. Fushi did take note of that.
I don't know what that means, but it's gotten smaller.
Yeah.
But I wonder if that's going to bite them in the butt.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily the size, but the fact that they still have the knocker. You know,
Yeah.
you're playing with fire here.
Yeah, it's very worrisome, for sure.
Yeah, but clearly, yeah, clearly, Kahaku has a better, at least somewhat better control of it.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah,
so we'll see going forward.
indeed.
But I feel like his goals and just his mindset is much better because he's trying to help people. I mean, yeah, he still calls Fushi theirs, ours, our
Yeah.
Fushi, I think he
Hmm.
says.
Yeah.
And a bit possessive, but I feel like he's still just in his actions for the most part. Most part, albeit it could just be trying to improve their image. So maybe it is just all about control. But I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know.
I still can't completely trust him.
Yeah, especially with the knocker arm too.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, you can't.
it becomes especially difficult, but also the Hayase lineage also. Like yeah,
Right.
there's definitely reasons to be doubtful.
Yes. Yes.
Hmm.
But at least he's not trying to seduce him at this point. But
Yeah.
allow me to say, or at least speculate.
Uh-huh.
I wonder if he wanted Fushi to turn into a woman, not just because he needed Fushi to change his form, because he could have changed it to anybody else and probably been okay.
Hmm.
You could change to Sheen or someone just like no one really knows, but he's like a woman, do a woman, and he's like no old, come on, give me something good.
Yeah, it really felt like that.
So I don't know. So maybe he is thirsty, and he still technically has the will of Hayase. So
Exactly.
maybe deep down he's just like, I want.
I want Fushi.
Oh gosh, I want Fushi.
Yeah. I don't think he can fully escape that. Like, he's kind of a slave to that in a sense, to Hayase's will.
Yeah.
Like even though he might be heterosexual,
Uh-huh.
which he does claim to be,
Mm-hmm.
he there is still that reincarnated will inside of him, and so when Fushi does take the form of a female, then well, it's not so strange that he might become just like all of his predecessors, you know.
Yeah.
Although I do agree, he does a good job at like not going overboard with it, like too much at least. Or
Right.
I mean, there was that one part
Well,
where he
there
was
was,
really
yeah.
like doting on her a little too much, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But still, I think all things considered, you know, with all these circumstances, I think he is doing pretty good. Kind of.
Right. Yeah, Kahaku is a very interesting like, character
Yeah.
at this point.
Oh yes.
I'm excited to see where it goes
I love him.
from here because it could go in a few different ways.
Mm-hmm.
I am excited to see that. Allow me one last piece of like speculation.
Yes.
It's just like really weird for me to say because I've just had in my. So when I first started the story, I referred to Fushi as an it, or
Right.
just because I just wasn't comfortable like giving them a gender.
Right.
But then he was so comfortable as being the boy that I started calling him he and just being accepting that, and I felt like the story was doing that too.
Yeah.
But now I don't know with him being Perona and then this whole thing with Kahaku, like don't tell me that like they're gonna have a child like that. That is just gonna I don't know, man. That just messes my mindset a little bit. I mean, it's not the end of the world, and we're dealing with Fushi, an immortal, transforming being here. So I'll accept it. But it's just like, huh.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, if he's comfortable with whatever way it happens, then I guess by all means.
Yeah.
It would be interesting if that's how Hayase's will is fulfilled.
Exactly.
Um,
That definitely would be. So yeah,
a different
obviously,
take.
right. Of course, I'm not going to comment on this too much,
Sure.
but it's definitely an interesting idea, and I do love Kahaku's character. Like, I think he's awesome. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Did you have anything more on him, or you said maybe you had something on the Guardians?
Yeah. Just obviously their growth is incredible. I mean, they're practically a country in and of themselves, and that was just with Hisame's point. Like they said they were large enough for a country, isn't it? Or it was a town? I can't remember. But it was pretty amazing, and I don't know. But at the same time, they seem to be separate from the Yanome, or at the very least, the Yanome are a country and guardians are a religion,
Something like
something
that.
like that.
Yeah, I think so.
Anyway, so the guardians, while still kind of sketchy, I don't know. They've played more of a role in the world building than I thought they would. So it's fascinating, I think.
Yeah, and they've really proven themselves, to do good in the world, especially under the leadership of Kahaku.
Yeah, like I did not expect that. I honestly thought that they would potentially cause some issues, and maybe there's something happening in the background, but
Right.
I don't know. It seems like they're really trying to make the world a better place,
Right.
and also they're quite capable of taking
Yeah.
down the Knockers.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
So, wow, it's like maybe this wasn't such a bad thing after all.
Exactly. Yeah. Things are looking pretty good right now with Kahaku and that side of things, plus the potential future cooperation with Bon. I mean, we don't know for sure, but
Right.
at least Fushi has that in mind
Yeah.
as a possibility. Anything more on Kahaku and the Guardians?
No, just things are good now, then something bad's gonna happen.
You know it. It's
Eventually.
this story in a nutshell.
Yeah.
But then let's move on to Bonchien Nikolai La Tasty Peach Uralis.
I can't believe Peach is in his name.
Tasty Peach.
Tasty
I
Peach.
love
I
it.
love it.
It's the best name ever.
Okay, I like this guy.
Yeah, he's quite the
I
character.
really like him.
And yeah, definitely at first glance, he seems like this very spoiled prince,
Hmm.
acts just like a child.
Yeah.
I think he still does by the end of it, or by the end of this book.
Right.
But I was very happy to actually like get into his backstory very early, like
Hmm.
pretty soon after he was introduced, because without that backstory in this book, I think having just read this book, I would have had a very bad impression of him.
Yeah.
But thanks to the backstory, it really helped a lot. He's got this ability to quote unquote see everything,
I see dead people.
which was I don't know if it's a little bit vague. Obviously, the obvious thing is that he can see dead people
Hmm.
and interact with them, but he also claims to be able to see the future. So I
Yeah.
don't know exactly to what extent he's able to do that, if at all. But it seems like this seeing everything ability is broader than just seeing the spirits of the dead.
Yeah, I thought, when I first read it, I thought the seeing the future part was just him exaggerating or maybe say being very confident that he'll be king. And that's how he sees the future.
Right, might be.
Um, but reading it a second time, I was wondering maybe there's more to his powers than we understand right now that the story is letting on. But I don't know.
Right,
We'll
yeah,
see.
yeah. It does remain to be seen.
Usually I don't like the posh characters, but because of that backstory and just even his mannerisms and kind of his just some of his lines make him endearing, even in
Right.
the short time he comes in. And I
Hmm.
really hope it works out going forward, at
Absolutely.
least a little bit.
Yeah, and I agree completely. Like his character, like before the backstory comes, I was just so annoyed with him. Like, oh my god, who is this clown? But yeah, like definitely the backstory helped so much, and yeah, like it was as we mentioned earlier, like he had Tonari, like her spirit would talk to him before he went
Hmm.
to bed and stuff like that, and it was thanks to her that he was able to recognize and kind of locate Fushi. And he even recited one of Tonari's quotes that she had said to him when he later on talked to Fushi. The thing about sharing your gifts with the people around you was something that she had said to him that he does that he can do that. And
Hmm.
he when he walked into Fushi's tent, he said that that's what Fushi does. And but then he added that that's what I would say if I was your old friend, something like that, which was a really nice little nod to that kind of. And I guess it sort of also kind of indicates that Bon and Fushi are somehow alike because they both supposedly have this ability, at least according to Bon. or at least he thinks so. Like
Hmm.
since obviously he was the one who used it in that kind of way, but maybe there's something more to that.
Potentially, I'm not sure, but at the very least, I hope he does become the ally, the friend that Fushi needs.
Yeah. Oh
You know,
yes,
I hope so.
definitely. I don't know if we have too much more on him. He made his debut kind of late into the book,
Yeah.
but do you have anything more?
I really wonder if that girl spirit will come back again at all.
Yeah.
And I wonder what kind of role or importance that is, if anything. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
it seems like it's important. It seems like it was gonna lead up to something, especially
yeah,
since she
yeah, yeah.
came and she left that handkerchief or like the thing that she had been working on his
Hmm.
bed, which is also interesting. If that's a physical object, how does that work? Or is it just
Right.
like a ghostly object? Like I don't know.
I, I don't know. I think she's real. I,
Interesting theory.
I
That would explain why the handkerchief is there physically, if it is.
right. And no one sees her, but I think she just escapes quickly,
Hmm. Hmm.
and they just assume it's one of the spirits he's been seeing.
Right.
But that could just be me being not romantic as in like I sense romance, but just romanticism. That kind of
Right. No, absolutely. Definitely. I really like that theory. All right, then. Let's move on to the Beholder.
their relationship, his and Fushi's relationship is it's almost comedic at this point.
Yeah, like especially, with the reproductive organs and stuff like that. That was really
Yeah.
funny. Like that was definitely really funny.
And then another one where it's like, oh, that's how they've been, or that's what they're doing now. Not talking about the knockers, like hiding in the arm. Wow, it's like that's weird. Or he says something like that, and
Oh,
then
yeah, like that's what they think is smart or like
oh that's what
or
they think is clever, or
or like
something like
whatever
that.
yeah, something like that.
And but then Fuji just turns around. And is like, oh, I bet he knew the whole time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I do wonder if he knew, because he didn't
Hmm.
say anything about sensing it.
Exactly.
So
Yeah, I wondered too. But as we have touched on a little earlier in the discussion here, the Beholder does go more in depth about like the human soul or spirit, and
yeah,
he refers to it as a phi. And also, I guess we've also kind of touched on this already with how the phi can carry on. Like if it does go into a new body, it can carry on the will of the previous person. And that's probably what's happening both with Hisame and everyone later in her succession, as well as Fushi himself.
here's what's interesting to me is that Phi needs a husk, a body,
Hmm.
in order to, well, to I guess live.
Right.
Which is, I guess, is kind of goes along with the whole spirit idea. But now that we have spirits that we can see, or at least Bone can see,
Right.
it makes me wonder if Fushi could potentially make a husk of a body, and then these spirits can go into them. That seems a little weird, and I don't know why the story would go in that direction. But I don't know if these guys are just chewing around, and if Phi can just go into a body and
So you're thinking, but hypothetically, if he would create a lifeless husk of Gugu's body, then Gugu's spirit can just go into that body and he would be alive again. Is that
yeah,
is that your thinking?
that's something. Yeah, exactly. Like, just theoretically, I'm not saying that's
Right.
where the story's gonna go, but based on what Beholder was discussing and what we saw at the end of the chapter or volume, that's just kind of where my thought went.
Right. That's a very interesting theory. Like it seems plausible.
But also kind of broken. Like,
Maybe a
I don't
bit.
know.
Huh. But let's say Fushi would be able to do that. Like, let's say that that's a thing that can happen in this magic system or whatever we want to call it.
Uh huh.
Fushi still wouldn't be able to bring everyone back to life if he would want to do that
Right.
because he would still need a shape for himself. At least if he would want to be in human form, you know?
Well, that implies that the spirits going into the body means he can't transform into the body either.
Right.
So he has to have the fire around in order for it to transform into those body. But then
Potentially.
we, but then we see. him able to transform into Piorin and Lean and other people who have decided to move on.
Or yeah,
Their fire.
supposedly. Like I guess we didn't. Sure, we didn't. Definitely didn't see everyone, walking with Fushi there at the very end. But it's also possible that there could be more people off screen.
Ah.
I get potentially.
Oh, that's a good point. That
We can't
yeah,
know for sure, I guess.
that's fair. That's fair.
But it's, I mean, it's still possible that you're onto something. I don't know.
Well, and now that you think about, well, now that I think about it, when he's able to take someone's body, it's because of the empty husk, I guess. I don't know. It's like the fire is not there. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm confusing myself at this point.
I'm sure we'll learn more about this as the story progresses. But it was still really nice to get more, like, to go more in depth on it in this book.
Yeah.
The beholder tells Fushi that Fushi's discomfort around Hisame was due to him not really knowing her very well, and he suggested that Fushi should approach her a little bit at a time in order to, quote unquote, become immune to her. And I thought that was a really nice way to foreshadow the reveal later on about Tonari's poison immunities.
Oh,
Like it's really like the same kind of way that he talked about it
good point.
is kind of in that same way. And I thought that was really nice. Obviously, it's nothing you'll notice on your first read through, but it's, yeah, I thought that was a nice little touch.
Yeah, that's a good comparison.
It's also nice to know that the beholder doesn't, like, it becomes very clear, I think, in this book that the beholder doesn't really know everything. He's not all knowing, far from it. He doesn't know what the objective of the Knockers is exactly. He speculated in this book that the Knockers might be jealous, potentially, of us, he said, which
He
to
says
me,
us.
yeah, to me seemed like him and Fushi, or at least that's where my mind went. Although of course it could be him and some other group of beings like him.
Yeah.
But we have talked about this before.
I do have more to say on this though, and this
Uh-huh.
is me going big brain theories here.
Go for it.
That are probably stupid. So, if it's supposed to be us, as in him and Fushi,
Huh?
is the beholder made of the same material as Fushi?
Mm.
And so, what if he experienced the same life that Fushi kind of did? Not exactly the same, but he went through the same kind of a growth and experience as a ball, then eventually becoming human, and then he created his own world. I don't know why they're creating his own world, but he experienced a different world, and then the beholder eventually gets to reach to a point where he can create his own world, and then he feels obligated to save that world or something, some sort of purpose for Fushi, in order for him to create his own world as well.
Mm.
It's it's kind of like it becomes a never-ending cycle of creating worlds, I guess. Creating
Yeah.
Fushis and worlds, but I don't know. That's just one thought I had when he said us, but also the fact that the Knockers were jealous of us. So
Yeah.
why would they be jealous? Maybe because they are jealous of the process that they go through.
Right.
Don't know why, but
Right. This is, I'm really happy to hear you come up with this sort of theory, because I've basically had almost an identical theory since the previous volume.
well,
Like since
really,
last time we talked. Yeah. Uh, Pretty much the same thing. Not quite exactly, but very, very similar. Basically that the beholder may have started out just like Fushi did, like you said, and that he is now teaching Fushi everything that he needs in order to eventually replace the beholder, because we learned a few volumes back that
oh,
the beholder is not going to exist forever. Fushi will outlive him was made clear in one of the
oh, that's
previous
true.
volumes. So what if Fushi's destiny is to become the new beholder, and
Ah,
and
that could be it. Yeah. Oh, that's a good one.
right, like I think that's, I mean, it's similar to yours. I guess just like has a little bit different focus, but I was really happy to see you suggesting a very similar theory there, and yeah, like how that could become a cycle of sorts. Like when Fushi's time eventually, like when his end eventually draws near, he might, place an immortal being onto the earth, and the cycle continues that way. Potentially, yeah, really interesting to think about that.
So another reason why I thought about that was all the way back to, I think it's the first chapter,
Hmm.
where Fushi basically asks, what do you want me to do? When will this end? And or when will my objective be complete? And the beholder says, when you can recreate the entire sea, and you realize that all of it is yours.
Oh yeah, the first chapter in this book. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Did I say the series or
No, no,
something?
you didn't say. You only said the first chapter. So in my mind, I thought about the very first chapter. Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I meant in the volume.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yes. Yes.
And so you hear that, and it implies that to me, one, he has to be able to recreate all of this,
Hmm.
but that it's all his. And so it kind of lends to your theory more that he would replace him. But when I first was thinking about it, it did get me thinking maybe he would have to create his own world, um, in that sense. But
Right.
I think both are interesting theories, and we'll see if we're both terribly wrong, or if or if
Exactly.
we're somewhere in there.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm super excited to see more about that. But obviously, that's like the long term
That's a long
reveal.
haul.
You know. But yeah, super
Yeah.
interesting, and also really fun that we both had a very similar theories at the same time. Yeah. Anything more on the Beholder?
He's still acting like he's not human again, which also got me thinking about what if he's the same thing as Fushi,
Right,
you
right.
know?
Yeah. But he's also so powerful. Like
Yeah.
assuming he has had a similar journey as Fushi, he has,
Hmm.
continued growing and growing and growing in power and his abilities, that he has reached this state now that he's at where he is essentially a god. And I guess it's not, well, it's not super strange for him then to think himself higher than humans and to be very different from an actual human.
Yeah, sure. But I also think that Fushi's potential growth could end up being becoming like the Beholder, becoming a god,
Yeah, oh,
um,
absolutely.
of sorts. So yeah, this could be Fushi could be like a pubescent or the making of a god, like the growth of God. I don't know.
Exact. Yeah, yeah, totally.
13,036 people died from Nokker attacks without Fushi being there.
Right.
I think that was pretty heavy for Fushi. But Beholder says, more people die from natural disasters.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. I guess that makes it better.
Okay, that's all I have.
Gotcha. Then the last thing, or the last little thing I have to talk about here, is the Knocker. So what I got on them is, for the past 40 years, they don't seem to have really changed their tactics too much while fighting
Mm-hmm.
Fushi. Over those 40 years, um, I think Fushi made a remark that it was just the same every time, sort of. Which I don't know. Maybe they couldn't find a new way to upgrade themselves, or a new way to fight Fushi. So he just kept on kicking their ass for 40 years, until about the time when the volume begins, when their new tactic is to attack elsewhere where Fushi isn't.
Yeah.
And I think that's been a really, well, a new interesting kind of take on them, but that also, as the Beholder said, is a good thing in a way, because it takes away Fushi's reason to stay away from everyone, stay away from the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess you can view, like, if you want to look at it from a bright
The
side,
bright
then
side,
yeah.
the Beholder side.
Exactly, yeah. But yeah, that was interesting. Like, and then the new tactic after 40 years is to attack where they won't be bothered by Fushi, supposedly.
I wonder what this Knocker in the Hayase lineage is
Mm,
doing. If is it acting on its own? Are they all kind of one connected being, and this is just a plan of theirs,
right.
or like I said, is it acting on its own? I'm not sure. Obviously, I don't have any sort of answer, but it makes me wonder why he desired, or why it accepts being in Hayase's arm,
Yeah.
or their arm, and now Kahaku's arm.
Uh-huh.
What is it trying to gain from this, other than I guess maybe the fact that Hayase wants to be near Fushi the Nokker, or this Nokker at least, sees it as a way to somehow get at him,
Mm,
maybe, and
maybe.
it just potentially biding his time, and maybe it's impatient at times. I don't know.
Yeah, my best guess is that it's trying to play like the long game and just really just wait for the perfect moment somehow.
Hmm.
Although it's hard to say, because let's say it would be alone with Fushi and be able to get like the first hit in.
Yeah.
Fushi at this point has so many vessels.
Yeah, it's true.
It would have to go through and steal all of those in order to defeat Fushi. So I don't know. I don't know. Hopefully we'll learn more about that.
Yeah.
So yeah, do you have anything else you'd like to talk about?
Just some random stuff that not related to knockers or anything. Mind if
All
I
right, let's do it.
go for it? Okay, so Fushi's faces when middle aged are too good. They're just so funny because
Mm.
there's one where Hisame, I think, mentions that she's reincarnated Hayase, and he's just like, ugh. Yeah, like
Yes.
it's just his face is so great. And then he has there was one where Hisame was really bothering him, and or he trying to ask him to do or was trying to do all these things for him. And one time he's in the bath, and his face was like, huh?
Yes, yes.
I love that face.
Would you like me to rub your back? Or to wash your back?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's so good.
This middle aged Fushi is pretty great.
Yeah, I
Um,
want more of him.
just comedic wise. Many arrows are better than one. That's another line that
Mm.
Sandals said, I believe. But
Yes.
I'm glad that he's slowly understanding that better in the context of, his friends and just relying and trusting people.
Mm. Totally.
Well, we mentioned that there's the bear, March, Gugu, and Tonari there with Fushi, but there's no one else it seems around.
Right.
I guess Ligard is there after it dies, um,
Yes.
but that's about it.
Right. At least as far as we can see, it's
Right,
hard to.
for now. Right,
Mm.
right,
Right. Right.
exactly. I'm not sure exactly why that is, except those are kind of the main ones, or is there any importance? I, it's so cute the way Hisame scoots near Fushi when they're around the fire. She goes scoot, scoot, scoot,
Yeah.
and to tell him about babies.
Yeah.
Um, it was really cute.
Really. Yeah.
I love how Fushi enjoyed making the Guardians and Hayase's uh, reincarnations uncomfortable by transforming into Tonari. That was just a little small something. He's like, I
Yeah.
look forward to them coming now.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that was really funny. It's been so much fun to follow along with Fushi's journey and his growth just as a person, and how at this point he just enjoys messing with these people that he
Right?
has an issue with for a good reason.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, and this is something I forgot to mention in the Fushi's section,
mm?
but we actually get narration from Fushi.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
we never we
Right.
haven't had at least this long this extended narration as he explains his sea story, as he explains his time in the town and the things he learned and the things he picks up. Like,
Exactly.
it's so fascinating that 7 volumes in, where back in volume 3 he was still struggling to put sentences together, but now we have full on narration
Yeah.
from him. So it's incredible how much he's grown.
Totally. Yeah.
Lastly, he gets the egg in the face. He's like, now I can now I can cook eggs whenever I want.
Yes. Yeah. That was
That's so
that was
great.
that was one of the funnier parts. uh,
All right, I'm done.
Again, looking at the bright side of life.
Right, right.
Ah, good old Fushi. But yeah, I guess that's it. Unless we have anything more, but I think we've covered the volume pretty well here. Any predictions or stuff like that?
Not a prediction, but more so overall this volume I felt like was a setup volume. There was a lot to cover in it, and there was a lot of characters going on, and
Yeah.
ending to some, and the start of new. And like we mentioned, the time pacing was just so fast, but I felt like it was setting up the next arc,
Yeah.
the next part, and so maybe the time will slow down now.
Right. Yeah, yeah, I agree with you completely. In the physical book, it actually says, like at the very last page, it says the Uralis arc begins.
Oh,
So So I think you're absolutely right about that. And yeah, it's strange. Like it definitely feels somewhat like a setup volume, even though there was really so much that happened. Like it's
Yeah.
full of content. Like so many
Mm-hmm.
things went down in this book. So yeah. I guess that just goes to show how good of a writer or of a storyteller Oima is. That even when it's just set up, it's so it's so eventful and exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, awesome. I can't wait for the next or to talk about the next book. So, if you enjoy our content, you can follow us on Twitter at Umami Manga, and it would be lovely if you'd like to support us by either rating our show on the podcast platforms or subscribing to our channel Umami Manga on YouTube. If you like this episode, please share it around with anyone you think might enjoy it too. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time where we'll talk about Volume 8. Bye bye.
See you later.